So here's another Ableton Live 9 beta video. Hopefully this one's going to be better than the last one. I don't know if you can see by the lighting conditions, but it's daytime. It's quite rare for me to be doing these videos in the day, so I'm feeling a little bit more fresh. I've had a coffee, and let's take a look. What I'm going to do is, this is a project. If you've been following my videos, you would check out the Enzyme Black album preview. So there's a track that I've been working on, and this is a real nice kind of slow, deep, futuristic tune, and I'm going to use this to just take a look at a couple of new things. And one is the Glue Compressor, and that's based on the Cytomic Glue, which is a great compressor that's very similar to the SSL bus compressor, so great for gelling music together. So I'm going to see how that compared to the signal path that I had on my master before. So I'm going to put it over the whole mix, and let's see how it sounds. The other thing that I'm going to do is take a look at the EQ, and just going to look at this whole concept of the Spektrum being overlaid onto the EQ. And in fact, I believe that there are improvements to the EQ in terms of the sound as well. So we'll take a look at that, because there's something about this track. One of you guys managed to spot this. I'm sorry I've forgotten who it was who did, but there is some very, very high frequency energy occurring in the main chord. So we'll take a look at that, see if we can tame it using this EQ. So firstly, let me just play this. Some of you will remember this, some of you won't have heard it, so let's have a listen. Just take you through the master signal path. It's deliberately got this kind of thickness to it already. Let's see if we can improve it. So the first one is a magnetic, then we have the vibe EQ. Going to turn it down on my side, and then the waves L2. Okay, so that's what's going on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this Glue Compressor over here on the left hand side, and just going to experiment with it and see what happens. Let's bring this down, so to the left of the chain. This is on my master. Alright, so these are basically designed to get our track nice and loud and sounding, so that when you play it on a variety of different systems, it's going to sound as good as it can be. So it's kind of like home DIY mastering. Okay, so the Glue Compressor, the whole point of this is to bind the mix together and make it sound more kind of coherent, as if it's the sort of thing that you would listen to when you listen to a properly mixed tune. And it's kind of like this kind of mystic, magic sprinkling of fairy dust quite often, and I've been using my magnetic to do the job so far. The magnetic has got this tape saturation here, which acts as a natural kind of glue. So these two here, these are doing that job for me, and I am pushing actually quite hard into, there is a little limiter inside here as well. I'm pushing quite hard into that too, because I deliberately wanted this thick sound. So if you were thinking about the rule book, this is probably not a good thing to do, but you never know. It might sound good. And I'll bypass stuff so that we can compare it and see how things are. So let's start off by just having it in a default setting. And I'm going to turn it on and off and have a listen. As you can see, I haven't got the most perfect monitoring conditions here, but these are pretty good for sussing stuff out. All right, and I should be able to pick up if there's any difference. And you guys are going to have probably the better position in terms of listening, because you may have good systems at home that you can listen with. So let's compare anyway. Just give me some comments back in the notes, see what you're thinking. Right, in order for this to work, we need to see some reduction occurring. We're going to see this little VU meter start moving, and that's only going to happen when I do this, when I reduce the threshold. I just want to correct myself there, because if the level was really hot before it hit this point, if it was really loud, then we'd already see some level going up and down. And if that was the case, what I'd recommend to you is you just drop in a little utility beforehand and maybe just turn it down, because we don't really want to see this jumping straight away. Okay, but I've been quite careful with my gain structure up until this point. So just a little side note there. So I'm going to bring the threshold down, and we're going to start to see the VU meter work, and that means it's turning the volume down. See that? So let's bring it down. There's different schools of thought with bus compressors. Some people like to see quite a lot of gain reduction, so i.e. a lot of movement over to the right. For me, I'd like to probably see it about -5, -6. Okay, so you can see it's bouncing quite nicely there. This is the default settings. I'm going to bypass it, and I'm going to shut up so you don't need to listen to me. Let's get a section looping away. Let's bring it back, stick the loop on. mean, I definitely like the sound of that. Let me just take this off. Do you know what? I'm gonna shut up in a minute and just listen. You know, I'm gonna A/B it because you need to hear this. But for me, what I was hearing beforehand was that the transients are stronger, so the drums, everything's kind of cutting through, punching really quite strongly. At the moment it feels like it's squashing it down just a little bit too much, but I suspect that's because we need to adjust some of the parameters. Okay, so I'm going to shut up, I'm going to do some A-Bing. Alright, so basically before, now what I want to do, just to be absolutely sure about this, is to use the makeup gain. So what we're getting is this kind of psychological feeling, no, actually it's not sounding as good. And that's because the compressor's pulling the volume down and I haven't used the makeup gain to compensate. So if we're reducing about -5, then, you know, this is a rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be precisely -5, but it's probably going to be somewhere in that region, just to get this compensating to bring the volume back up after we've turned it down. All right, that's the whole thing about using these things. So let's listen again. I'll shut up. So once again, without, and then I'm going to turn it on and compare. So I noticed the clipping was coming in there, so possibly we're too loud. Let me bring this down. This is interesting because I didn't notice the clipping before. Maybe it was clipping, and I don't know enough about this. I haven't read enough about it, so I don't want to actually push into that for the moment. There is a soft clip button on there, so what I'm going to do instead is to increase my gain using utility after, and this is literally because I need to read up some more about how this particular compressor works. All right, so my feeling is I just want to bring it up here. So let's have a listen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to group these two together so these become one effect, so the two of them, so I can bypass them both together. It's going to give us a much better result in terms of being accurate for the comparison. So here we go. Right, I don't know what you're thinking, but when I listen to that, it sounds like it's really pumping. It feels actually it's got a really nice texture to it, but to be honest with you, it feels like it's squashing the transients too much. So we're talking about these kind of nice biting kind of percussive elements of the drum, the break. It feels like it's squashing too much. Now what we would encourage you to do if that sort of thing is occurring is to slowly attack. So over here, this parameter here, this is set quite fast. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to step it up. As a comparison, we're going to use this 30 milliseconds, I'm guessing this is 30 milliseconds by the way, 30 milliseconds attack. So what it's doing is it's taking its time to reduce the volume. It's not reducing it quickly, it's reducing it over a longer period. So that has the effect of allowing the transients to cut through before it turns it down. So let's have a listen, let's see how that is now. So off. Now notice that we've got less gain reduction. So what I'm going to do is bring the threshold down a bit more. Bit more. I'm really liking the sound of this, the way it's got this kind of energy. There's something going on with this, I like it. Let's go before. Okay, that's good, that's good. Now the other thing to consider of course is the release, and by the way the ratio is important to consider too. Back in the day on the SSLs, a lot of guys used to take the ratio 2:4 to 1. You can see this here. All right, so this is kind of like the strength of the compression, if you want. All right, so the higher the number, the more obvious the sound of the compression is going to be. So 4 is pretty good for this gelling, binding together kind of concept, and I'm going to keep it there. So I'm going to focus now on the release. All right, so generally, as a rule of thumb, the longer the release, the kind of more kind of squashed down it's going to feel. Longer releases are good for things like pads or longer sounds, but generally when you've got the whole track, there's this kind of delicate fine tuning of getting the release right, just to get the energy there. So what I would suggest is, when you've got it over the whole tune, start reasonably long. I mean, something like this time here, which I've got a feeling, I'm looking at here at the 0.8, 1.2, I'm wondering if this is seconds, all right? So 0.8 would be 800 milliseconds. So really, I think if you're doing this kind of thing, we'd probably start around there and then make it go faster. And listen, as you go faster, obviously what tends to happen actually is things start jumping around a bit. They sound a bit too messy. So you can kind of start slow and then bring it faster. And of course there is an auto as well, which can work really well over a whole complete mix. So let's have a look. Let's experiment, see how the release works. So that's the 0.8, 800 milliseconds. Let's try it as a contrast faster. Actually, it sounds a little bit more lively. I'm going to contrast that with the auto. Now, it feels to me that auto is going for a faster release time there. So I'm going to leave it on there for the moment. I think that's working really well. For me, I've got a sense that it is binding things together. It's kind of making it sound a bit more complete. And that's something that I was attempting to do anyway. By the way, this is a work in progress track, so I haven't mixed it properly just yet. So I want to just take a look at the effect on the last element in the chain, because if I'm compressing here, it's kind of having a knock-on effect to all the others. And at the moment, I'm concerned with the actual level at the end of the chain. So I want to see how this is affecting it. Okay, so overall, it's pushing a similar amount into the limiter at the end of the chain. So I'm cool with that. I'm happy with that. So my first impressions of the Glue are that it sounded really, really good. I need to read up a bit more on stuff like the clip and see what's going on with the circuit there, see whether it's safe to do that. And now I want to focus on this chord. Okay, so let's have a look. I need to open this up with the filter. You can see there's some automation going on here. I'm going to bring it over here. This is deliberately messy, by the way. One of the things that's causing this kind of ringing texture is the erosion. So I'm going to take it off. So if you've got good monitoring, you'll hear there's some ringing texture. So let's have a look with the EQ. This is going to be a great example to see these improvements with the EQ8. I'm going to drop it in here and let's take a look. Right, okay, now this is good. I wonder if we can still move this. There we go. Okay, Ableton guys, I'm pleased that we can see this. Now this is great for my demonstration. The ringing characteristic that I'm hearing is occurring over here. So we're talking about 12K and 18, very, very high frequency elements. I'm going to take the erosion off, keep your eyes over here. You see it's gone. And back. So what I'm going to propose is we use the EQ just to tame these over here. Now EQ6 is a bell curve, which is cool. So I'm going to bring this over, take it over to the higher frequency, so about 18. See this? We're bringing it down. And we take number 5 and roll this down a little bit. So I'm taming it. I can still hear the benefit of the erosion effect on there. Oh, by the way, my computer's struggling. You can hear the fan. I'm at 50% on the CPU meter, but I think it's holding it down, which is good. So look, there's the EQ8. So without and with it. So I'm still getting the elements of that texture that I really like with the erosion. The sine wave on there adds this kind of digital kind of texture to it. It was a little bit too loud there, but here using the new EQ8 I've been able to visualize and see where those spikes were, pull them down with a bell curve. So that's really nice. I've heard rumours that the circuitry, or the virtual circuitry inside the EQ8 has been improved as well. All right, so if I get a chance to, I'm going to take a look at using that in a more detailed way. We'll see what happens, okay? Because there are also other things that I'd like to focus on, some of these new features on Ableton Live 9 Beta. So once again, just want to make sure you understand this is a beta version. This is not the version that's going to be pushed out to everybody when it's released. I think they're pretty close, okay? But things are still being tested, so everything here may be slightly different by the time you see it. Who knows, okay? But really enjoying using Ableton Live 9 now, okay? So check back later at some point, maybe after the end of this weekend. I might have some more videos for you.